Welcome to Deep of Kindness, a place where kindness meets emotion. Here you'll find heart-touching stories, real-life kindness moments, and motivational tales that remind us of the power of being human. Each story inspires love, compassion, and positivity, helping you see how a single act of kindness can change lives. The city of London buzzed with its usual rush, cars honking, footsteps echoing across wet pavements, and the golden glow of streetlights reflecting off the drizzle-soaked roads. Inside the Grand Silvercrest Hotel, the air was different. Soft music, chandeliers glowing like captured stars, and the quiet murmurs of the elite dining in luxury. Among them moved Arman Khan, a 24-year-old student with tired eyes and a calm smile. His uniform was pressed, his hair neatly combed, and though his hands carried trays of expensive dishes, they also carried dreams of completing his studies, becoming something more than a poor boy from a small neighborhood. Arman had come to London 2 years ago on a partial scholarship, but life in the city wasn't kind. After paying rent and tuition, barely anything was left for food. Every night he worked at Silvercrest to survive, sometimes skipping sleep, sometimes skipping meals. Yet no matter how difficult life got, he never lost his honesty or his gentle manners. That night, fate had plans for him. It was almost 9 p.m. when the manager approached him. "Arman," he said, lowering his voice. "Table 7. That's Mrs. Eleanor Hayes. She's one of our most important guests. Be respectful, careful, and attentive." Arman nodded. He had heard that name before. Eleanor Hayes, the widow of one of London's richest businessmen. Some said she owned half the city. Others said she was cold, distant, a woman who lived alone in her mansion, surrounded by paintings and silence. Arman straightened his tie and carried the silver tray toward her table. She sat alone, wearing a soft blue gown that shimmered under the chandelier's light. Her silver hair was tied neatly, her posture graceful, the kind of elegance that came not from money, but from dignity. Her face had wrinkles, but her eyes, deep gray and observant, held both strength and sorrow. Arman approached quietly. "Good evening, ma'am. May I take your order?" She looked up, studying his face for a brief moment. "You're new here," she said. Her voice was calm, yet carried authority. "Yes, ma'am," Arman replied. "I joined a few months ago." She nodded, glancing at the menu. "Bring me your chef's special tonight and—" She paused. "Tell me, young man, what's your name?" "Arman, ma'am." "A beautiful name," she said softly. "It means hope, doesn't it?" He smiled faintly. "Yes, ma'am. That's what my mother told me." Something in his tone made her look at him longer than usual. There was warmth in his humility, a quiet sincerity that most people around her had long forgotten. After serving her meal, Arman noticed something glinting on the floor near her chair. A diamond ring, small yet dazzling. Without hesitation, he picked it up and gently placed it on the table. "Ma'am, you dropped this." Eleanor looked surprised. "Oh, I didn't even realize." She smiled faintly, then sighed. Most people would have kept it and walked away. Arman shook his head. "It doesn't belong to me. My mother used to say, 'What isn't yours will never bring you peace.'" For the first time that night, Eleanor laughed softly, a genuine laugh, not the polite kind she gave at social events. When Arman finished his shift and was preparing to leave, the manager stopped him. "Arman, Mrs. Hayes wants to speak with you in the VIP lounge." Confused and nervous, he walked down the quiet corridor to the private section of the hotel. There she sat, sipping tea with an unreadable expression on her face. "Sit down, Arman," she said gently. He hesitated. "Ma'am, please, I insist." He sat uncertain. The air between them was thick with curiosity. "You're a student, aren't you?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. I study economics at Westbridge University." "And you work here to pay for your studies?" He nodded. "Yes, I send a little money home too. My parents are struggling." She stirred her tea, her gaze distant. "You remind me of someone I once knew. Honest, hardworking, full of hope. It's rare these days." "Thank you." "Ma'am," he said quietly. Then came the words that would change his life forever. "Arman," she said, looking directly into his eyes, "I want you to marry me." For a moment, the world around him froze. The soft hum of the piano, the clinking glasses, everything faded into silence. He thought he misheard her. "Ma'am." I beg your pardon?" Eleanor smiled faintly. "You heard me right. Marry me, Armin." He blinked, unsure whether to laugh or be shocked. "Ma'am, I'm just a student." "You're old enough to be your grandmother?" she interrupted calmly. "Yes, I know. But I'm not asking for romance, Arman. I'm asking for companionship. I've lived in empty halls for years. My family only visits when they want money. I'm tired of pretending to be strong." Armin stared, speechless. She continued, her voice softer now. "You returned my ring when you could have sold it and changed your life. That honesty means more to me than all the wealth I own. I don't need someone rich. I need someone real." He swallowed hard, his mind spinning. "Ma'am, people will talk. They'll call me a gold digger," she smiled sadly. "They already talk about me, Armin. Let them. Life's too short to please the world." Armin leaned back, overwhelmed. It sounded unreal, like something from a movie. He thought about his debts, his family, his future. Was this a test, a trap, or destiny playing its strange game? "Think about it," she said, standing up slowly. "I'll be at my mansion tomorrow evening. If you decide to say yes, come see me. If not, I'll understand." She walked away gracefully, leaving Armin sitting there, lost in thought. That night, he couldn't sleep. Her words echoed in his head. "Marry me, Armin. I'll change your life." He thought of his parents living in a small house, his mother counting coins for bills. He thought of his unpaid tuition, his dream to graduate. But more than that, he thought of her eyes. Lonely, tired, but still filled with kindness. Was this really about money? Or was fate offering him something he didn't yet understand? The next evening, after hours of confusion, Armin stood outside her mansion, a massive white building surrounded by roses. He took a deep breath, his heart racing. The butler opened the gate. "Mrs. Hayes has been expecting you." As he walked through the grand hallway, Eleanor appeared at the top of the stairs, smiling softly. "So," she asked gently, "have you decided?" Armin looked at her, the woman the world called old, but whose heart seemed younger than anyone he'd met. He nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am. I'll marry you, for the first time in years." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, and in that silent moment, two souls from different worlds, bound by loneliness and fate, a story began that neither of them could have ever imagined. The news spread faster than wildfire. Young poor student marries 71-year-old millionaire widow. Every newspaper, gossip column, and online blog carried the headline. Pictures of Armin and Mrs. Eleanor Hayes flooded social media. In the photos, she looked graceful in a pale ivory gown, while Armin stood beside her in a simple black suit. Looking nervous but composed, people didn't see the truth. They saw what they wanted to believe. Gold digger. Opportunist. Poor boy married money. Even, Arman's classmates whispered behind his back. His best friend Samir confronted him one night. "Arman, tell me honestly. Did you do it for the money?" Arman smiled faintly. "If I did, would it make it easier for you to believe?" Samir frowned. "I just don't understand why, man. She's old enough to be your grandmother." "I didn't marry her for age," Armin said quietly. "I married her for peace. Something she was searching for, and maybe I was too, but no one understood. Only Eleanor did." Their wedding took place in the backyard of her mansion, under a soft golden sunset. There were only a few guests, her lawyer, two close friends, and Armin's landlord who acted as witness. Eleanor wore a smile that looked like a long-forgotten memory had finally come back to her. As she walked down the garden path, holding a bouquet of white lilies, the light breeze lifted her veil gently. She looked fragile yet radiant. Arman watched her, not with desire, but with deep respect, the kind that only truth can give. When the priest said, "Do you, Arman Khan, take Eleanor Hayes as your lawfully wedded wife?" Arman looked into her eyes and said softly, "I do." And for a moment, the world seemed to stop. That night, the mansion was filled with laughter for the first time in years. The servants smiled, seeing their madam happy again. Eleanor's eyes sparkled as she cut the small wedding cake, feeding Armin a piece with trembling hands. "To new beginnings," she whispered. Armin spent that night sitting on the balcony, staring at the stars. He could hear her soft music playing in the distance. Everything felt unreal, not because he had married a millionaire, but because of how calm his heart felt. In the following days, they developed a quiet routine. Every morning, they had breakfast together in the garden. Eleanor would sip her tea slowly, reading poetry aloud, her voice soft, filled with wisdom. Armin would listen silently, sometimes smiling, sometimes lost in thought. "Do you like poetry?" she asked one day. "I used to," he said, smiling, "but life made me forget about it." "Then we'll bring it back," she replied, eyes shining. She often told him stories of her youth, how she met her husband at a charity gala, how they built their empire together, how she lost him to illness, and how her family drifted away after money replaced love. "I've had everything." "Armin," she once said, her gaze lost in the distance. "But when you have no one to share it with, even a palace feels empty." He didn't answer. He just listened. Sometimes silence was the best comfort. But Eleanor's health was fragile. Armin noticed it, the way she coughed softly when she thought he wasn't looking, how her hands trembled when she poured tea, how she'd pause mid-sentence to catch her breath. He suggested calling a doctor, but she waved it off. "No doctors," she said firmly. "They only tell me what I already know." That night, she asked him to sit beside her in the living room. The fire crackled gently, painting the walls in shades of orange and gold. "Armin," she said softly, "do you ever regret marrying me?" He looked at her surprised. "No, ma'am, not even once." "Even though people laugh at you?" He smiled sadly. "People laughed when I was poor too. Their reasons just changed." She reached out, her frail hand resting on his. "You're a good man, Armin. The world doesn't see it yet, but it will." There was silence for a while, the kind of silence that carried unspoken truths. Then she stood up slowly and walked to her desk. From a drawer, she took out a small sealed white envelope, tied with a gold ribbon. She handed it to him carefully. "Promise me something. What is it?" "Open this 7 days after our marriage, not before." He frowned. "What's inside?" She smiled softly. "A part of my heart." He hesitated, but she placed it in his hand firmly. "Promise me, Armin." He nodded. "I promise." That night, he placed the envelope inside the drawer of his study, unaware that it held the truth that would change his life forever. The next few days were peaceful, yet heavy. Eleanor seemed brighter, laughing more, humming old tunes, showing him photo albums from her younger days. She looked alive. One evening, she asked him to take her to the sea. "I haven't seen the ocean in years," she said. So they drove to the coast. The sky was painted in pink and gold as waves crashed softly against the shore. Eleanor took off her shoes, letting the water touch her feet. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Do you know, Armin, when I was your age, I used to run barefoot along this very beach." "Life was so simple then," Armin smiled. "Maybe it still can be." She looked at him, her eyes soft. "Maybe it can, for you." As they drove back, she fell asleep in the car, peaceful, like a child. Armin looked at her through the rearview mirror, wondering how a person could carry so much grace even in their pain. On the 7th night of their marriage, rain tapped gently on the windows. Eleanor had dinner early and said she wanted to rest. "Good night, Armin," she said with a weak smile. "Tomorrow I want to show you something special." He nodded. "Good night, ma'am." He stayed up late, reading, while the mansion grew silent. Around midnight, he went to check on her. The lamp beside her bed was still on, its warm light falling over her face. She looked peaceful, almost smiling, as if dreaming of something beautiful. But when he softly called her name, she didn't move. "Mrs. Hayes?" He stepped closer, his heart tightening. Her hand was cold, her breathing gone. The silence was louder than thunder. The envelope, still sealed in his drawer, waited for the morning. And as the rain fell endlessly outside, Arman realized that the woman the world had mocked him for marrying had just left him with something far greater than money, a mystery, a lesson, and a love that went beyond time. The morning after Eleanor's passing was wrapped in a heavy stillness, the kind that seemed to cling to every corner of the mansion. The grand house that once echoed with her soft laughter now stood eerily silent. Outside, fog hovered over the garden, and the roses she loved swayed quietly in the breeze, as if mourning her departure. Arman sat in the living room, still wearing the same shirt from last night. He hadn't slept. His eyes were red, his face pale. The paramedics had come, confirmed what he already knew, and left. The staff moved around quietly, whispering through tears. For 7 days, she had brought light into his life, and now she was gone. As the sun rose slowly, its pale rays slipping through the curtains, Arman looked at the small drawer of the study desk. Inside lay the white envelope she had given him, tied with a golden ribbon. His heart pounded as he reached for it, his hands trembling. For a moment he hesitated. Opening it meant facing the last word she'd ever left him, a final conversation he would never be able to answer. He took a deep breath and carefully broke the seal. Inside were 2 things, a handwritten letter on thick cream paper and a small silver key, old but polished, shining faintly in the morning light. His fingers brushed over her familiar handwriting. The first line made his throat tighten. Dear Arman, if you're reading this, it means I have gone where time no longer hurts. Don't be sad, my dear boy. I've lived my life fully, and you gave me the gift of peace in my final days. You reminded me of my late son. He was honest, humble, and kind, just like you. But I lost him long ago, to an accident that took my heart with it. After his death, I buried myself in wealth, thinking gold could fill the silence. It never did. Then one day, a poor student returned a diamond ring to me. The world called him foolish, but I saw something divine, a heart untouched by greed. That's why I asked you to marry me, Arman. Not because I needed a husband, but because I needed to believe in goodness. Again, you gave me that. The key inside this envelope belongs to something I built quietly. A place called Eleanor's. Hope. It's a charity home for students like you. Dreamers without support. Hearts full of ambition, hands tied by poverty. But it's not just in my name anymore. Now it's in yours. The official papers have already been signed. You, Arman Khan, are the legal trustee and owner of all my charitable properties. Use my fortune not to live grandly, but to make sure no other student ever has to choose between hunger and education. This is my real legacy, and you are part of it. Don't cry for me, Arman. Just promise you'll keep the light of kindness alive. With love, Eleanor Hayes. By the time he finished reading, Arman's vision blurred. His tears fell silently, staining the letter. He pressed it to his chest, feeling the weight of both loss and gratitude. He looked at the silver key, simple, yet shining, as if it carried her spirit. He whispered, voice breaking, "Thank you, Mrs. Hayes." Later that afternoon, her lawyer, Mr. Raymond, arrived, a dignified man in his 60s with kind eyes. He greeted Arman quietly and placed a thick folder on the table. Mrs. Hayes had prepared everything, he said softly. She told me you might not understand it at first, but she believed in you. Inside the folder were documents, property deeds, bank details, legal transfers, everything in Arman's name. There were also photos of a newly built building on the outskirts of the city, Eleanor's Hope Foundation. She began this project 6 months ago, Mr. Raymond explained. It's almost finished. Classrooms, dormitories, a library, even a scholarship fund. She said she wanted it to be run by someone who knows what struggle feels like. Arman listened silently, his heart overwhelmed. She never told me, he whispered. She wanted it to be a surprise, the lawyer said gently. She said, he'll understand the day he opens my letter. That evening, Arman went to visit the site. The building stood tall near a small river surrounded by trees. Its stone walls gleamed under the golden sunset, and the signboard read in elegant letters, Eleanor's Hope, a place where dreams begin. He stood there for a long time, holding the silver key tightly in his palm. The wind brushed against his face as he walked toward the main door. The lock clicked open with a soft sound and he stepped inside. The halls were quiet but full of promise. Classrooms were still empty, chairs neatly lined. In one corner, a plaque on the wall caught his attention. It read, "Dedicated to the dreamers who never gave up, and to one honest soul who reminded me of kindness." Eleanor Hayes Arman touched the plaque gently, tears returning. He could almost hear her voice, calm, wise, filled with warmth. He walked into the main hall, where sunlight poured through the tall windows. It was there he made a silent vow. "I'll keep your promise alive," he whispered. "Every child who walks through these doors will carry your kindness forward." Weeks passed. The media once again turned their attention to Arman. But this time, the headlines were different. Young student turns millionaire's fortune into free education home. Arman Khan opens. Eleanor's hope for underprivileged students. Reporters tried to question his motives. But when they saw the sincerity in his eyes, the tone changed. He refused to live in her mansion or use her wealth for himself. Instead, he moved into a small room on the top floor of the charity home. Every morning, he'd unlock the gates with the same silver key and welcome the first group of students, kids with dreams as big as his once were. He taught them about life, about perseverance, about kindness. He hung Eleanor's portrait in the main hall with flowers beneath it. And every evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, he would sit by the window, reading her letter once more, as if hearing her speak through the paper. Years later, people still spoke about their strange marriage, but the story changed. It was no longer a scandal. It became a legend. They said, "A poor student once married a lonely millionaire. She gave him wealth, but he turned it into hope for thousands." And sometimes, when new students asked about the photo of the old lady in the hallway, Arman would smile and say, "She was the one who taught me that true love isn't about age or money. It's about kindness and the courage to give without expecting anything in return." One night, standing outside the charity home, Arman looked up at the stars. The same stars he once stared at from the hotel balcony when his life was uncertain. He whispered into the night breeze, "I kept my promise, Mrs. Hayes. Your light didn't fade. It only grew brighter, and in that quiet moment, it almost felt like the wind carried a soft voice back to him. I know, Arman, I know. Moral. Sometimes, love and destiny appear in the most unexpected forms. Not to change our lives through wealth or desire, but to awaken the goodness we had forgotten within ourselves. True kindness leaves a legacy no time can erase.